Welcome, everyone. So we got Sean and Tang in the audience. Well, this is very exciting because it's our very first workshop event. And so, for those who don't know, I'm Shah. I am a data scientist at Toyota Financial Services, and I created this Discord called the Data Entrepreneurs, and it's a community for data people that for people that work in the data space. And the whole goal of this thing is to promote the development of data focused people, projects, and businesses. And so we do events like this twice a month. So we have different types of events. We have workshops, which is like this. So we have a presenter up on the stage here, and then we have people in the audience that will observe and can interact with the speaker. But we also have forums, which are more collaborative, not presenter led events where everyone kind of just jumps in and we have a discussion around a specific topic. And so, one that we did recently was on large language models, where we talked about what is a large language model and different use cases. We were discussing and brainstorming different use cases of large language models. And so, this is exciting because it's our first workshop event. And, you know, for many people, even if you've used Discord, maybe you've never been part of a stage channel event before. And so this is definitely my first time using the stage channel. So a couple things I wanted to point out. Everyone in the audience, in the top right corner, you should see like a chat button. It looks like a little text box, talk bubble kind of thing. If you can go ahead and click that and put something in the chat. So we already got something from J-Man. He said hi. Let's see. Sean Tang said howdy. We got one more. Sup from Sean. So everyone is familiar with the chat option. There's another option too. So for people in the audience, you should see a hand icon at the bottom. And so what this hand icon does, so if you're in the audience, go ahead and raise your hand. And what this allows you to do is to kind of identify yourself as someone that wants to speak. And so the way these stage channels work is, instead of everyone being able to talk all at once, we have designated people on the stage who are the speakers, who are the only people that can talk, but you can always raise your hand if you're in the audience and get prompted to speak. So I just invited Tang to the stage, so he's now on the stage. Welcome, Tang.
Hello.
And now I can move him back to the audience. And so that's a cool Tang's back. This is a cool function because we're going to use it for the Q&A session at the end of the presentation. Also, Tang will be monitoring the chat and the request to speak during, because I will not be able to kind of look at the Discord screen while doing the presentation. So feel free to interrupt. If you have questions, drop them in the chat or go ahead and raise your hand, and I'll be happy to answer those. Okay, one last thing. We are doing, like I said earlier, we're going to be doing 2 of these events a month. So if you're interested in leading a workshop or giving a talk, this is a great opportunity. If you want to talk about a project you're working on, let's say you're doing research, you want to do a practice of your dissertation, or you want to do a practice presentation, or you are a working professional and you have some pitch coming up, or you have some presentation coming up that you want to practice for, this is a great opportunity to do that. So if you're interested, go ahead and after the event, go to the submission forum channel or the event submission channel and fill out the Google form there. And you'll be able to sign up to give a presentation. So we've got a couple more coming up this month and next month. One from J-Man, who's sitting in the audience. He's going to give a guide to cloud computing. And then we have another speaker, Matt, who will be giving... thanks for that, Sean. Another speaker, Matt, who's going to give us a rundown of Tableau basics. Okay, so with all the housekeeping out of the way, I'll pause if there are any questions at this point about TDE, about our events, about the stage channel.
I'll just invite myself to ask a question.
All right.
So, if someone is interested in, I guess, doing an event, what kind of process is it for them to do that?
Yeah, so it's super simple. Thanks for asking that. The first step is to fill out this form in the event submission channel. And when you fill out that form, it's a Google form. So you just fill it out. It'll ask you your name, what you want to talk about, and just some other details about the talk. And then the person who submits the form, you'll hear from me or Tang. We'll just kind of talk through the event idea and work with you if you want to do any kind of practice. And then we'll put something on the calendar and we'll make it happen. So we're going to be promoting these things across different channels on LinkedIn, in the Discord, and elsewhere. But there's also, if you don't want it to be a public or a recorded event, we can also do private events where it's like an invite-only situation. So this is meant to just be whatever is needed for the presenter. If it's just you want to practice, we can do that. If you want to kind of provide value to the community, you can do that. All right, so now we'll kind of jump into the session, and I'll go ahead and share my screen. There we go. All right, nice. How does that look, audience members? Maybe Tang, you can give a little feedback of what that looks like for you.
Yeah, it looks good.
Okay, great. All right, so the whole session today is about how to make a data science portfolio using this thing called GitHub Pages. And so, for anyone trying to get work in data science, whether you're trying to find a full-time role or you're trying to find contract work as a freelancer, a key part of the process is not just knowing your stuff, not just being a competent data scientist, but being able to show your stuff, being able to display and convey your competencies as a professional. And a lot of times, it's more the people that are able to stand out and distinguish themselves from other candidates that get the role, as opposed to the most qualified candidate. And so, while a resume is a great way to kind of tell people your experience and your education, an even better way to show off your experience and work is using a portfolio. And the reason is everyone has a resume, but not everyone has a portfolio website. And so if you're like me and you're not a web developer, this might sound like a very difficult task. But lucky for us, GitHub Pages has this built-in functionality to spin up websites relatively easily without any code and completely for free. And so that's going to be that's what this session's all about, how to use GitHub Pages to spin up a portfolio. So this is GitHub Pages. This is what the kind of their website looks like, websites for you and your projects. It looks pretty cool. So you can do it you can do it as like an individual or an organization, or if you want to make a kind of website specifically or for a project, you can do that. So what this is going to look like at the end, or what this can look like, is something like this. So you have this really clean design. There's a nice headshot of me. This is the role I'm kind of in, or a role that I'm interested in getting. So put my technical skills here, and then just like typical stuff for your resume. But then, since it is a website, you can have links. You can link publications. Oh gosh. You can link publications, you can embed videos, you can have images. So this is a great way to just give yourself credibility and visibility to all your experience and the projects that you've worked on. And so I'm going to break this down into like 5 easy steps. So the first step to doing this whole thing is making a new GitHub repository. And so if you don't have a GitHub, if you don't have a GitHub account, I would go ahead and make one. And also in the audience, if don't feel obligated to follow along because we are going to record this and post it. So I'm just going to kind of go through this relatively briskly. So we'll create a new repo, and the first thing that we want to do here is add a repo name. So here we have two options, and each option will kind of impact what the URL for the portfolio is. And so the first option is to put your GitHub username .github.io. And so if you make this your repository name, this will be the URL for your website. It'll just be your GitHub username.github.io. And so I'm not able to do this because I already have a website running under this URL. But let's say you don't want that to be your URL, and you are fine with it being something else, or you want to make a website specifically for a project and you already have a portfolio running. You can just give it any name that you like. So in this case, I'll just go with portfolio. And what this will look like as far as the URL is it'll be, again, your GitHub username .github.io, and then it'll be / whatever name you give your repo. And so I'll leave it at this. I'll leave it as portfolio. The second thing I want to point out here is the repo has to be public in order for this to be a live running website. So you can't make it private. You can, but you need to have the paid version of GitHub. So if you want to really do this for free, the repo needs to be public. And then the last thing we'll do is just add this README file. Just check this box here. And that'll create the repo. And so the next step is we're going to create a new folder. And so this folder is going to be where we dump all the images we want for our portfolio website. And so we have to give it a very specific name. So the folder will be called assets.img. And then since I'm making a file, I have to give it a name. So I'll just call it readme.md. And I'll just put some text here. Dump all your images in this folder. And then hit commit changes. Yes, we'll commit it. And then we can go back. Oh, actually, okay, so I made this new file just so I can have this folder, this assets img folder. And now we can go ahead and upload files. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to upload a headshot. And so I already have it ready to go. So I got this nice circle headshot here. And I'll commit the changes. And so now it took us back to our repo homepage. But if we click into this assets image and click on headshot circle, we can see that the image is sitting in this folder here. All right, so we got our headshot uploaded. Now we can go to step 3, which is we're going to create another file. And we're going to name this config.yml. And so what this YAML file will do is essentially tell GitHub how to create your website. And so this is a no coding solution. And basically what's going to happen is we're going to just type in text into our repo's README file, and it's going to automatically generate a website based on that text. And so this config file is basically it tells GitHub how to make that translation from a markdown file into a live active website. And so there are 3 key things we need to add here. The first thing is a title. And so this will be basically the text showing in the top left corner of the website. So if we kind of go back to the final product, it's this text here. So this is the title. Next, we're going to specify a logo, which is going to be the headshot we had here. And so the logo, we just uploaded it to assets/image/ and then you put the file name, headshot circle PNG. That should be right. And then the final thing is we pick a theme. And so in my case, I really like this theme called Minimal. So we'll just specify that, Jekyll theme Minimal. And that's what we see here. I think this makes a lot of sense as far as a portfolio goes. You can have your static stuff here, and then people can kind of scroll down. It's going to be mobile friendly. It's a cool design. But there are some other options as far as themes go. So there's this website, it's pages.github/themes. I can just go ahead and drop this in the chat for everyone. Oh, J-Man, good question. So we can look at these other supported themes. So let's just open a few of these up. So this is the architect theme. So it's a bit, I don't know, to me it just feels a little cartoony. I don't love it a lot, but if this kind of suits your needs, then that might make sense. Here's another one, Cayman. This one's pretty cool. It's kind of like this, has this gradient up here. You can add some code that's like code snippets. That's pretty cool looking. I like this design as well. So maybe you like that. Dinky. I don't have a lot of high hopes for this one, but okay. I mean, this isn't bad. It's kind of similar. It has this like static thing on the left, and you can scroll down. So that's pretty cool. But anyway, you can just go to this pages.github.com/themes, and you can just poke around with these other supported theme options. But I'm going to stick with minimal because I like that one the best, and I'm going to go ahead and commit changes. All right, so we'll go back. And now we're going to step 4. So we're going to fill out our README file. And so again, this README file is going to get translated into the final website. So this is going to be the content of our portfolio. And so the first thing is I'm just going to quickly fill this out. Just so we have something when we spin up the website. So I'll put kind of the roles I'm interested in. I'll put education here. Let's see, then work experience. Data scientist. Okay, and then we can add bullet points. So I'm not gonna put anything out. Not gonna write anything out live, but we'll just put something in there. All right, high impact projects. And then we can start listing projects out here. So put like, super cool project. I can't type. Super cool project title. And then you can put some more info here. Okay, so I'm not gonna run through this whole thing now. Just gonna put a little bit of text so we have something, and then I'm gonna commit these changes. And then we see our README file here. And then the last step is we're gonna build and deploy the website. So this is super simple. We'll just go to settings over here, and then we go to this left panel and we find the Pages option and we click that. And then we have this section called Build and Deployment. And so we're going to keep the source deployed from a branch. And then we're going to go down here to branch and we're going to hit main. And then we'll just go ahead and hit save. And so now we see GitHub Pages source saved. And now if we go over to this Actions tab over here, we'll see this kind of workflow has been queued and it's going to start running. And so now all the magic's happening in the background. GitHub is taking all the things that we put into our repo, it's taking that config file, it's taking the README file, it's taking the headshot, and it's doing its magic and going to spin up the website for us. And so we'll just let that...
It looks like Josh was requesting to speak if you want to...
Oh yeah, go ahead. Good time for a question.
Hey, yeah, we've just, I don't know if you get like a notification or anything, but we're asking questions in the chat.
Yeah, I'm not able to see those, but yeah,
Okay.
I'm happy to answer the question
So
right
I
now.
had a quick question before when you were creating you're doing those hashtags and then
Yes.
adding your work experience. What do the hashtags mean?
Okay,
What does that do?
that's a good question. Okay, so let's circle back to that. We'll finish this up and then we'll come back to that question. But that's a good question.
Okay. And Sean also has one.
Yeah, so we'll come back to the questions at the end of this real quick. Okay, so now we have this green check mark here. So we can, once we have that check mark, we'll click deployments. And then we should see these options. So we'll actually have a deployment history here. So if we've just had one deployment, so we only see one option. But if we had more, we'd see them all listed here. And then we can hit the most recent deployment. And we'll just click this. And basically this will spin up the website. So now we have this website here. You know, we have our headshot, we have our title, and then we have all the content of our README file. And so I'll just kind of like jump ahead, like in the cooking channels where we can just jump to the final product and you don't have to see me kind of labor through it and sit through that. So through filling out the README file, you can just end up with something like this, where you have, you know, your projects, your links, different images, some text, and like really whatever you want. So you can really customize it. So I'll share this. I have this other repo. So this is an example portfolio. So I'll share this link. And for anyone interested, you can just go ahead and copy paste all the content of this README file. You know, this is a lot more filled out than the one we just quickly threw together. And then this should be a really good starting place for anyone trying to spin this together. And so let me transfer back over. That's the link to the example portfolio. So I think we're doing pretty good on time. And now we can kind of get back to these questions. So Josh, you had a question about the README files. And so I think this is a good place to enter. Okay, so you're asking about the hashtags and all that stuff. Okay, so this is a special type of file. It's called a markdown file. And what these hashtags do is they're setting different levels of heading. So one hashtag means heading 1, two hashtags means like heading level 2, and then so on and so forth. So this will kind of dictate the size and like the boldness of the font. So this is what like heading level 1 looks like, one hashtag. This is heading level 2, two hashtags. And then I had the 4 hashtags here. And then that looks like this. Some other basic markdown. You know, also if you're familiar with Discord, they also use this type of syntax. So if you want a bold font, you can add these asterisks before and after the font you want to, the text you want to bold. Another great markdown thing is you can add links. So this is what that syntax looks like. You put what the display text is in square brackets, and then you can add the link in like normal parentheses. Let's see. If you want to add an image, this is how you do that. You add the exclamation mark. You put the square brackets of like what you want the title of the image to be. I mean, this is optional, but you can have a title for your image. And then you put the file name of the image you want to use. So again, we're going back to this assets image folder, and then in this example portfolio, we have a file called eegband.discovery.jpg. And then also you can kind of do bullets in a very intuitive way. So you just put the dash space, and then you put whatever bullet point you want. Numbered lists are also very intuitive. You just do the numbers and it goes down. And if we kind of hop over here, this is what the link looks like. This is what that image looked like. This is what the bulleted list looks like, and then this is what the numbered list looks like. All right, we had another question from Sean. For those who haven't worked extensively in Markdown, do you have any resources to learn? Yes, so that's a really good question. So I also I'm not a Markdown expert, so whenever I get stuck, I will always just Google like GitHub Markdown, and there's this page I always come across. So yeah, this is helpful here. This is the GitHub docs. Oh yeah, I think this is the one I usually come back to too. Oh, this is nice. Adam P has saved us with this cheat sheet. So let's use Adam's cheat sheet. All right, let's see. J-Man, is there a place that defines all of these? I can see them all, like a link or something. Yeah, so hopefully that... okay, so let me invite Josh up to clarify. So Josh, do you mean the Markdown stuff, or do you mean the GitHub things?
Yeah, it's what you just posted.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. Okay, so I'm kind of going back now, making sure I didn't miss any other questions in the chat. Okay, I think I got them all. Okay, so yeah, that's the... Let me stop streaming. So that is the quick rundown. Hopefully that made sense. So this is kind of the transition point to if you guys have any other questions, or we can have like an open discussion about portfolios and GitHub and all that kind of stuff. Okay. Sean has joined the stage.
Yeah. Before we started, we were talking about like you were kind of messing with me. You're like, bring any questions, and I was like, oh, didn't even think about any. And I sent you that link of questions that I asked ChatGPT to provide, and I wonder if now might be a good time to maybe go over a couple of those.
Yeah.
And talk about maybe not the exact steps to create it, but like how often should we update our portfolios? What projects define, like what are portfolio worthy projects?
Yeah.
And kind of some stuff like that, especially from someone like yourself who's created your own portfolio and kind of cultivated what you want from it.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll kind of riff off that one question you had, which is how often should I update my portfolio? And so this really depends. So you typically update your portfolio when you're trying to get a new role or a new job. So that's the typical cadence. You know, in the freelancing space, you're always looking for work. So does that mean I should always be updating my portfolio? And kind of the interactions I've had with freelancers, this is not the case. You know, still, it's kind of like the same thing where going through this exercise of like updating your resume, updating your portfolio, and that whole showing aspect of this it's a lot of work. So even then, even the most active freelancers that I've come across, they'll typically update it maybe every 6 months, but really, it's really just as needed. You know, if you're able to just submit your resume and get a job, then you really don't need the portfolio because your resume speaks for itself. But if you're kind of if the resume is not getting the job done, then the portfolio is a great option. So I see. Okay, here we go. J-Man, should your portfolio have everything you have done, kind of like a master resume? I would say no. So a key part, as you know, this kind of goes back to our discussion we had in an earlier forum specifically on resumes. But for a portfolio, it's critical to know your audience. So what does that mean? Who is this portfolio meant for? What kind of jobs are you trying to get with this portfolio? So like, if I'm trying to get a like project manager role at a large company, that resume is going to look a lot different if I'm trying to get a freelance research, if I'm trying to get freelance research contracts. And so that, because everyone has a rich history. Typically, if you like think hard about it, you've done a lot of work, especially at this stage in your careers where you're kind of, post grad, you've worked in some roles, you've worked on projects, you typically have a wide range of experiences, and it doesn't necessarily make sense to put every single piece of information on your portfolio if it's meant for a particular audience. So again, kind of just like with a resume, it's critical to know your audience when making your portfolio.
If you don't mind, I have an add-on to that question there.
Yeah.
So let's say you're a fresh graduate who's trying to make a new portfolio. Would you pick some of your like most intensive projects that you did over your course, or how would you decide like what you're going to be posting?
So I think one, know your audience. That what kind of jobs are you trying to get? Are you trying to get a software engineering role? Are you trying to get a data scientist role? Are you trying to get a data analyst role? That's the first step. Also, are you trying to get a role in a specific industry? So are you trying to go into tech? Are you trying to go into finance? Are you trying to go into marketing? So answer those questions. That's the starting place, because now that allows you to kind of frame your portfolio and your projects. Only pick the projects that make sense in the context of that story. So like, for example, Sean was talking about how he built some compiler when he was an undergraduate. Does that make sense for a marketing analytics role? Probably not, but maybe he did a project where he was kind of working with user info on social media or something like that. Just doing some kind of social media analytics. Even if it's a less technical project and maybe it's like less impressive on the surface, it's a lot more relevant. And relevance will beat sophistication every single time when you're talking about a particular role.
Okay, just to add on to that a little bit more.
Yeah.
So for me, since I'm doing both, marketing analytics and data visualization now with my new role,
Yeah.
you think it'd be smart to have two different portfolios and kind of just link whichever one is more relevant to whatever I'm applying for?
Right. So if you're applying to two flavors of jobs, one is like marketing roles and one is like data visualization roles, not necessarily in marketing, then I think it would make sense to have two separate portfolios. But if it's going to be the overlap between the two, like you're going after that niche of data visualization specifically in marketing, I would have one portfolio that highlights both those skill sets.
All right, that makes a lot of sense.
Great. Let's see. Is there a limit to the number of portfolios can you make in Git? No. You can make as many portfolios and websites that you want. And then, this is where that repo name comes in. So you can just keep naming the repo whatever you want. So like portfolio marketing or portfolio data science, or you can make it like data scientist or marketing analyst or the name of the role that you're trying to get. And now you can have like dozens of different, well, maybe not dozens. I don't know if people are trying to get dozens of different jobs, but you can have multiple of these repos for all the different jobs or areas that you're interested in. See how we're doing on time. Yeah, we're doing good. So, Sean, I see you posted this screenshot. Is there any question that you is really top of mind for you? Oh, let me invite you to speak.
I would say out of these that I was kind of just pulling from, my main one that I think we've touched on a little bit, but maybe a more direct like question would be more beneficial.
Mm-hmm.
But like for someone like me who's for those who don't know, just getting out of college, not been in a data science role, but is interested in starting
Mm-hmm.
and building a career, what kind of projects should we put in, especially since we don't have that professional experience
Yeah.
to draw from?
Yeah. So I'm really glad that you asked that question, because I think a lot of people will resonate with this. You have kind of a vision, like I want to be a data scientist in X industry and X company or whatever it is. But when you look back to add projects to your portfolio or your resume, you just can't find anything relevant or anything that really fits. And so if you don't already have the experience, one of the best ways to get it is through independent projects. And so now we can kind of talk about, like, how do I choose independent projects? Like, how do I even get started? And especially when you're first getting started, it feels like there are too many, like, you don't even know where to start. Like, how do I pick a project? How do I do a project? you know um, so I think, kind of going back to knowing your audience, so think about the relevancy. So don't just do like any independent project. Do a project that seems relevant to the roles and the space that you're trying to get into. The second is, I would caution very strongly against using just ready to go data sets that you can find on the web. Because the problem with those data sets, these like toy data sets you might find, like MNIST or the IRIS data set, or like the countless others that are pretty standard in the space, is they don't really, they're so disconnected from the real world. They don't give you a sense of any kind of real world impact or value. And on top of that, they're just not very interesting. If I'm looking at like a data scientist resume and all I see is like MNIST, IRIS, it's like, oh, okay, this sounds like what they did in like a class or something like that. It's not very, it doesn't seem very impactful. But what makes a lot more impact are projects from the real world. So what this might look like is if you're interested in marketing analytics, you build some kind of web scraper to like scrape like top Instagram influencer accounts or top brand accounts, and you just track their like social media analytics, and you create some cool like dashboard based on those accounts and using this web scraper that you put together. Or you kind of figure out how to use Instagram's API to pull in that data. That is a lot more impressive than just kind of finding some data set on the web and putting together that project. And so kind of grabbing data from the real world, through a web scraper, or maybe collaborating with a local business or organization that you can do kind of free analytics for, is a great way to get your hands on real world data that can translate to higher value, higher impact projects. Questions about project ideas in the Discord to get feedback? Yes, great question. So we have a project board in the networking category. And so this is a great place to throw out project ideas. So, if you're just learning, or you're trying to put together a product, you have some research questions, or you just have some half-baked ideas you want to throw out there and get feedback on, the project board is a perfect place to do that. And so, especially for you, Sean, or anyone that is just getting started and they're kind of struggling to kind of navigate a from scratch independent data science project, this is a great place to just throw out ideas and get like mentorship and feedback from other people in the community. Any other questions? Looks like we got one coming through. How do you come up with new project ideas that will best apply to a portfolio? So that's a good question. And for me personally, it just depends on your goals. Like for me, I'm not at the stage where I'm like looking for a specific job or I'm looking to kind of get hired or anything like that. So these days, I just kind of go after my curiosity. So I've recently gotten interested in studying like virality and scaling laws on social media. Like basically, how does viewer count on YouTube videos scale with the number of subscribers on a channel or the number of videos posted on a channel? So like that's the kind of thinking I have now. So if I did that project, I would probably throw it on my portfolio just because, I'm not necessarily trying to get a job, but I just feel like that was a really cool project and I just want to put it out in the world. But if you're trying to get a specific job, I would kind of go back to who's my audience? How can I get real world data? How can I use a web scraper to grab it? How can I collaborate with an organization or a business to get it? And then can I work with other data scientists or find some mentorship to help guide me through this project? Is it important to showcase code to use projects or just methods used? How would you gauge? So as far as the portfolio goes, this needs to be very digestible and comprehensible. Like someone that is not technical should be able to look at the project, like title, description, images, whatever you have on there, and immediately be able to understand what that project is, why it's important, and maybe some insights of how you did it. Where you want to put the code is I would make a GitHub repo for that and then have a link to that repo on the portfolio. But as far as code goes and like the technical details, just leave it out. Like no one, even technical people, they're not going to sit there and read that code most of the time. If they're interested, they'll click on the GitHub repo and they'll look at your code. But on a portfolio, I would just give it the 5-second version of the project. Just keep it short and simple. How would you gauge what is important enough to provide in a portfolio? Again, this kind of goes back to the audience. And so the filter and lens I would use is of relevance. Is this relevant to my audience? Do they care about this kind of stuff? And impact, or value. Does this project provide any kind of real world value to anyone? Is there any kind of can the audience relate to it and see that project providing value in their business and their life? All right, if there are no more questions, we kind of went a little even further over, so this was really good engagement, better than I expected. So I'll pause. If there are any final questions, feel free to raise your hand or throw them in the chat. All right, sounds good. Well, thank you guys for being part of this first workshop. This event was recorded, so I'm going to throw this into the past events channel. So those who were not able to make it, I know we have members all over the all over the world. So even though it's noon here in Texas, it is like 8 p.m. in some parts of Europe. So we're going to share this in the past events channel. Expect a post-event survey. So we're going to be sharing that with the people that were in the audience here today. We'd love to get your feedback. We're always trying to improve these events so that everyone in the community is getting as much value as possible, like through being an audience member or being a speaker. And with that, thanks again, guys. I hope this was valuable and look forward to seeing you at the next workshop, which will be on Tableau Basics, led by Matthew Spruckman.